When the likes of British royal dynasties are thought of, many school curriculums teach them, we know quite a lot about the Tudors with Henry VIII, or the Normans with William I and Battle of Hastings, or perhaps, the modern Windsors with, Cleves II, foundation of the Commonwealth, King Charles III. However, I think there's always one dynasty in my mind that is often left out, and really never has served its justice. That is the Plantagenet dynasty, started in 1154 with Henry II, all the way up 1485 with the fall of Richard III, Battle of Bosworth. I'll be taking you on an 8-part series over 331 years of history, looking at Henry II, Richard I, John, Henry III, Edward I, Edward II, Edward III, Edward II, Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, Edward IV, Edward V, Richard III. 14 monarchs to go through, from civil war and chaos to another civil war, battles, a 100-year war, and lots of internal affairs, so to say the same. This is the Plantagenet dynasty. England's root as a global power was cemented by these people. An Angevin empire, a kingdom, and warfare, to the collapse nearly of defeat. This is the Plantagenets, or warrior dynasty. Please enjoy the series. Hello and welcome to episode 5 in the series of the Plantagenet dynasty. I'm sitting down for this one because I've got a lot of notes to read through, and I apologise in advance often because I know that when you fit a 116-year conflict into a 10 to 15 minute video, I have to cut out a lot, and I do very much apologise. Nevertheless, I do very much recommend some videos I'll put on the screen now about the 100 Years' War. Also watch these if you want the full guide as well. So I do apologise that ultimately I have to cut a few things out to make this fit into the video. But nevertheless, this is the 100 Years' War. It actually lasted 116 years, but doesn't sound quite as catchy. Going through 5 of our English monarchs, and much devastation was caused. Sources are in the description. Let's begin. The 100 Years' War's motives were the same like pretty much any other war up until this point in 1337, lasting for 116 years until 1453. England and France were claiming each other's throne, titles, nobility and even dukes, and they wanted that ended. France particularly wanted English holdings on the continent to end, while England wanted more French holdings, particularly around the Count of Anjou and Brittany, and further expansion in Calais, even into Flemish territory, and of course the French throne. Our first monarch, of course, is Edward III. Started the 100 Years' War, reigning from 1327 to 1377. 50 years reign, one of our longest reigns ever to this date, and his wife was Philippa of Hainault. Richard II is our next monarch, from 1377 to 1399. His wife, 2 wives, Isabella of Falloux and Anne of Bohemia. Bohemia is modern Czechoslovakian Austrian area. Henry IV reigned from 1399 to 1413, a 14-year reign, also with 2 wives, Joan of Navarre and Mary de Bohun. Henry V, one of our most famous monarchs, followed victory, which we'll go on to later, although ironically only a 9-year reign, 1413 to 1422, had 1 wife, Catherine of Valois. And we had Henry VI, who saw the 100 Years' War end for England, reigning from 1422 to 1461, 39 years, marrying Margaret of Anjou. Also during the 100 Years' War, off the battlefield, I'm going to start this conversation, although a very famous treaty that still exists today and has just celebrated its 650th anniversary, the Anglo-Portuguese Treaty of 1373 made by our King, Edward III, in which England and Portugal promised a pact of mutual friendship in which the 2 countries would never declare war on each other, and if asked for other assistance, they would fight for each other, and this stand forever, although the only slight alteration made in the 1970s, in which when Portugal was fighting, of course, anti-colonial conflicts, Britain could not intervene. But to this day, minus that small alteration just a few decades previously, it stands that England and Portugal are allies, and is the longest peace treaty formally at least recognised in the entire world. The two main engagement photos in this video are, I think, the most good and infamous to focus on. And again, do apologise, I can't fit everything in. It's taken me nearly 3-4 minutes just to say the monarchs at the start, although I do find it quite interesting. Although the battles were bloody, and as both sides seeked a quick war, ultimately a war of both attrition and not continuation, because fighting a 116-year war is incredibly expensive. It cost the approximate, with inflation added, over £40 million a year to get this war running, so hence why 116 years, there are a few breaks in between the battlefield. Nevertheless, we of course have the Battle of Crecy, again Edward III's reign we're talking about here, and this occurred on 26th of August 1346. The English, it was a victory for the English as they were led by the great Earl of Northampton, Edward III, against King Philip VI of France and the comedically named, in my opinion, Rudolph, Duke of Lorraine, for France as well. The English suffered just 300 killed, whereas the French suffered 4,000 killed. And yet again, right after the Battle of Hastings, the English tactic of controlling the high ground worked. The French cavalry and infantry found it incredibly hard to run up the hill, and the English could chase them down, and they ultimately won the battlefield. However, probably the most famous battle of the 100 Years' War, and remains one of the most famous battles in history, at least amongst the British to this day, is the 25th of October. Similar to Trafalgar, that was also in October, it's always October, 1415. Henry V witnesses one, it's of course the Battle of Agincourt, another English victory. And also the Duke of York was there, hence where the nursery rhyme gets its name from. The Duke of York marched up the hill with his 10,000 men. Although, it's slightly lesser known today, but if you grew up at least until about the early 2000s, you would know the memory of the nursery rhyme. Against the French were the Duke of Orleans and the Duke of Bourbon. The English suffered as 600 killed, the French saw around 10 times that at 6,000 killed, and was a great patriotic victory for the English, and Henry V himself took out quite a lot of the French cavalry and French army, mostly with axes, and it was a very bloody battle. Some men were literally buried and got crushed in the mud. However, although I have slightly sugar-coated and anglophiled this video so far, the war would not be that case. Ultimately, some internal problems with England, some kings having disputed conflicts and opinions on the conflict of war, and Richard II being deposed during his reign, the second of our monarchs during the 100 Years' War. In 1453, on the 19th of October, the conflict would end with a fairly decisive, can't say that word, French victory, in which England would give up all continental possessions minus Calais as a port. And it has actually been calculated that the 100 Years' War, although estimates vary, is by one of the most horrific and bloodiest battles in human history. 2.3 million to 3.3 million people, were either directly being a soldier or civilian, or indirectly through disease and famine and food shortages, died as a result of this conflict, which is even larger than those killed in the French-Algerian War, which I've also discussed about, which you'll see at the end of the video when I put it up on my playlist section of the history. So ultimately, the 100 Years' War would lead on to the War of the Roses, what was to come next. Why? Because the 100 Years' War brought about 5 monarchs, but also great economic, social and militaristic ruin to England. Their position in Europe was now very much a second-rank power to Spain, France, and even the ever-rising Duchy of Moscow, later of course, Tsardom of Russia. Our economy was very much stagnated, and we'd spent too much on the war. Many people had died, and many nobles thought that even the idea of monarchy at this point at England, and then continually marching into battle, and the fact that many of our people, like the Duke of York, whether it be the Earl of Northampton, were only there because of their links to royalty rather than merit, and things had to change, and now, and radically, for England to survive the rest of the 15th century. As a result, like I've just mentioned, a war, another one this time, but civil war, would erupt for England in the War of the Roses, although that is a story for another time. From the 100 Years' Wars and roots can never be forgotten. And ultimately it was a French victory, which is important to remember. Battle of Agincourt, Battle of Crecy, much talked about, I think, in English history, but we do have to acknowledge that we did lose. The English and the mighty British Empire is not invincible and can be beaten. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in my next YouTube video. Goodbye.